channels or TV channels. This is a very common image. So hopefully you can understand what is the topic for today. So it is nothing but it is regarding disaster. What is a disaster and how do you manage a disaster? So it's nothing but disaster management. It is a small chapter in your park textbook and it is very important. Why? Why? Because you as a medico or medicine person, you need to know what happens during a disaster and how is it managed from our side. So basically, disaster management is very important for your theory point of view and practical point of view. Theory point, you will be getting. There are two or three questions like what is a disaster cycle, what is mitigation. So around 60 to 70% of you will be having migraine. Of you will be asked the same in the Viva also. General Viva also. This is the most common question which we ask regarding disaster. And other important point is triage. What is a triage? These are the important, very important things. So before going to disaster, let us see what is the definition of disaster and what is a disaster cycle, how do you triage, importance of vaccination, nutrition, and each and everything. Because the health point of view, you need to know what happens during a disaster. Disaster can be of different types. It can be natural disasters or man-made disasters. So again, man-made disasters are including these which include global warming, nuclear attacks. That is also called as CRB, and we'll see these things in the coming slides. Okay, let's come into the discussion. So, if you need to follow the new textbook again, the old textbooks have a different definition. I just cross-check those things. There's slight extra material in the newer textbook, especially for this chapter. Compared to 22nd edition, 23rd edition has extra things. The definition is also changed in the definition in this book. So, according to UN, it is defined as a serious disruption of the functioning of a community or society involving widespread, widespread human, material, economic, or environmental losses. So it can be anything: human, material, economic, and environmental losses which exceed the ability of the affected community or society to cope using resources. So this is a simple definition of disaster. Not simple; it's a big definition of disaster which you need to know. Again, this is given by United Nations. Okay, and again, India has also implemented its own new definition for disaster. So, Disaster Management Act in India is for 2005. As this act, disaster means catastrophe, mishap, calamity, or grave occurrence in an area in any area. It is might be arising from natural or man-made causes. So, natural and man-made causes, or by accident or negligence, which results in substantial loss of human suffering or damage to destruction of property or damage or degradation of environment. So ultimate important point is magnitude is beyond the coping capacity of the community of the affected area. So if there is any disaster, when we say it is disaster, the area or community can't cope up with their own resources. That is, they need to have resources from external source. So there was a crash. Recently, you have seen in Kozhikode, India, there was a plane crash. So after a plane crash, there were victims of around 200 or 300 people. Sorry, 150 or 200 people at the max. So when such a catastrophe occurs, there will be a hospital in the airport itself. So airport can carry around hardly 10 to 15 people. So it is beyond the capacity of the airport to see these patients. So they require coping capacity. That is, they require capacity from outside to cope up with these things. So disaster is nothing but a huge occurrence where they require assistance from other areas other than this community, their own community. So such a thing is a disaster, a big thing. They require support from outsides. Okay. So coming to a small terminology, that is hazard. Hazard is any phenomenon that has the potential to cause disruption or damage to the people and their environment. So hazard is a very small thing. It can be localized. It can be hazard. So when there is a ditch, open ditch, it is a hazard to us. Or if there is a bad road, this is a hazard for accidents. So hazard is nothing but a small incident or activity which might occur, and hazard happening on a large scale affecting large number of people, we call it as a disaster. So hazard leads to on a large scale we call it disaster. So you need to know what is a disaster and what is a hazard. So Emergencies and disasters do not only affect the health and well-being of the people. Frequently, large number of people are displaced or killed or subjected to risk of epidemics or economic harm is common. Harm to infrastructure is also there. So there will be health and well-being of the people is affected, economy of the people is affected, and there will be affected. Infrastructure is also affected. So basically, disaster means don't concentrate on a single thing. See, recently we have many disasters like floods were seen in Assam, and again plane crash was there in Kerala, and again sterile gas leakage happened in Visakhapatnam, and again the epidemic which you are saying, you can collaborate. Each and everything right now is happening are disaster and disaster management. So everything is not the same. They might be overlapping with one another. Coming to each and everything. So right now coming to harm of infrastructure. So directly infrastructure is not harmed in epidemics like now COVID-19 epidemic. Infrastructure is not directly affected, but indirectly it is affected. But economic harm is there for sure. So it is only not only health and well-being which is affected. It might be economic or infrastructure also is damaged. Yesterday floods and recent cyclone was in West Bengal, cyclone Amphan, and earlier the week there was cyclone in Visakhapatnam. So all the infrastructure in Visakhapatnam, if you are aware, all the trees were uprooted. Many of the electricity poles were damaged. So infrastructure damage was there to a large extent. So that is disaster. So disasters can occur anywhere and any time. There is nothing that disaster need to. There is a restricted place or the area. Only few countries are affected. It's never like that. Disasters can occur at anywhere or any time in any part of the world. Not only in the world, it can occur in the space also. If you see astronauts, they also come across to some missions. So disasters can occur anywhere at any time. Vulnerability to disaster is growing day by day. We are vulnerable to disasters because of our human man-made activities. We are doing deforestation. We are doing extra agriculture, greenhouse effects. So vulnerability to disaster is growing. So COVID-19 is a disaster. Again, it is one of the indications due to high number of interpersonal travel to countries. That's the reason people travel is one of the cause which is a spread of this pandemic, epidemic to pandemic. You have one of the main causes travel, human travel, which has resulted in this such vulnerabilities. So vulnerability to disasters is growing. So day by day, we are seeing more number of disasters coming to 2020. You have seen many disasters. So nothing to mention. So it can occur anywhere at any time. So it depends on the area. Disasters may vary. So if you see the coastal area may be affected by cyclones and floods. If you coming to few countries, they might be affected by earthquakes, not in our place. So in the deserts or in a tropical countries, we might be affected by high temperatures or low rainfall or droughts. Everything comes under disaster. So again, we are classifying disaster. Disasters may be of different types broadly. So in the old textbook, you don't have this disasters classification. So if you are going to new textbooks, go through new classification which was given in the 23rd edition. So types of disasters are two types. It may be natural disasters or man-made disasters. So again, it is broadly divided into geophysical, which might be happening on Earth, hydrological, which happens related to water, meteorological, that is sun, air, water, environment, and climatological or biological. Biological is nothing but environment. So these are the various types of disasters, natural disasters. So if you are seeing in there, natural disasters. So natural disasters is geophysical. We see is earthquake, volcano, tsunami. All these are geophysical, which occurs on the geography of the earth. Earthquake, volcano, bursting of volcano. So there was a recent volcano also, and man-made disaster recently in Mauritius. There was a ship leaking crude oil into the ocean in near Mauritius. So many disasters we have seen in the recent days, recent months. Okay, hydrological includes floods, landslides, and wave action. So floods, landslides also recently Kerala had landslides due to heavy floods. Okay, meteorological includes cyclones, storm surge, tornado, extreme temperatures, heavy rain, and sandstorm. So climatological include drought, extreme hot and cold conditions, forest wildfires. So forest wildfires also was seen recently, especially it was seen in Amazon in Brazil, and also in our country also there was wildfires. So you can implicate each and everything to the recent leaks if you are aware what was happening with the social media or through news channels. So you might be well accompanied. So next would be biological. Biological include epidemics and insect infestations. So which we see, and also recently you have seen insect infestation also. Locust infestation was seen in Gujarat, Maharashtra, and fortunately in Telangana it was not there. So most of them has occurred recently, and you can correlate recently. So coming to man-made disasters or human disasters, we also call as human disaster, terrorist activity, nuclear activity, and improper town management. This is nothing but second image is nothing but irregular town management, that is occupying lakes and lakes, especially the urban areas leading to flooding of the cities and towns, is also a man-made disaster. So, what are the main causes of man-induced disasters? Is rising human population, rapid urbanization and industrialization, environmental degradation and climate changes that aggravates the vulnerability to various kinds of disasters. Can that is biological, radiological, and nuclear hazards rank very high among human use disasters. So CBRN, you can relate, correlate everything. CBRN is nothing but chemical. Recently there was a cyanide gas leakage. Biological, so biological COVID-19. Few of them term it as biological. To be confused, anthrax was one of the biological threat, and recently COVID-19 they say it as biological, and we are not sure. And next is radiological leakage. Again, nuclear Chernobyl disaster, which again in Russia was a radiological disaster, and nuclear is atomic bomb. Okay, CBRN or CBRN hazards are very important recently, and you need to have a broad idea of those things. Okay, and terrorist activity was also we also include them as human-induced disaster and warfare. Warfare of any type also is included under disasters. So, what are the important implications? Why are we discussing so much with disasters? Because as a result of disasters, there are four important types of things which happen. Four important morbidities. That is, morbidities, mortality. Do other apart from mortality, morbidities are different types, which include injuries to the person directly or indirectly may be occur, or long-term injuries might be long-term injuries might they suffer might long-term injuries which might be especially due to nuclear radiation. Radiation injuries might not be affecting immediately, it might take a few days or weeks or months to show up. And emotional stress, especially when there is a flood or anything, when there is a property loss, economic loss to an individual, there will be emotional stress and epidemic of diseases, health is affected, so ultimately person is affected and increasing indigenous affected diseases. Indirectly, for suppose there is a flood or earthquake, ultimately what happens after the earthquake or the floods, patient would be, people would be taken to a settlement area or to a safe area where there would be overcrowding and there would be no proper sanitation facilities, and the nutrition might not be sufficient. So ultimately there would be again new diseases. If their sanitation is not maintained, again they might lead to typhoid, cholera, or any diarrheal infestations might occur, or or if there is no proper maintenance, mosquito management occur, and malaria or other diseases might increase. So these are all the implications. They might be immediate problems or delayed problems which might be occurring due to a disaster. So those are the implications with health. So you must have a broad idea what happens. So if you see the plane crash which occurred in Kerala, what happened? Immediately there was loss of life and there were serious injuries and long-term effect. The person who were helping, they were ultimately COVID positive and economic loss. So everything was one another. So it need not be immediate loss. There might be long-term implications also. So that is disaster. Okay. So disaster management, how to deal with a disaster. So there would be three important steps. Again, they are subdivided. So one would be response. That after when there is an impact of disaster, immediately the things we do is immediate disaster response and disaster preparedness. Next would be after response, it would be preparedness. That is, the community or the country or the state must be prepared depending on their location. So if there is a volcano, how do you prevent? If there is an earthquake, for suppose in a few of the countries, Western countries and in Japan, they are more prone to earthquake. So they build their houses with wood or not less heavy material. They don't build multi-story apartments or they don't build any concrete walls. They just build their wall with wood or other things. So that is preparedness and mitigation. Mitigation is nothing but activities which are done to reduce the effect of disaster. So a country or a community must be prepared. So for this thing, we are having NDRF team. You can see NDRF vehicles on the roads of Hyderabad. Recently, NDRF vehicles are being deployed in many of the districts of Telangana also. So we are government is proactive in coming with for preparedness. Especially, we are prepared for only floods, mass floods. So this is a disaster cycle, typical disaster cycle which you need to have an idea. So whenever there is a disaster impact, as on the right you can see, when there is a disaster impact, immediately there is a disaster response. Response would be the two types: immediate response. Immediate response would be coming from the surrounding people. Like if there is a plane, for suppose there was a plane crash, so immediate response would be from the person who was less injured. Or for suppose there is an earthquake. Earthquake, every person might not be affected the surrounding structure. So response, immediate response would be persons uh, involved in this disaster or the persons who are nearby. For suppose if there is a flood and all the ground floor apartment or all the ground floor houses were flooded. So they would be moving to the top floors. So top floors responders should be immediate responders should be people living in the top floors. Or when there is a plane crash, immediate response for responders would be the persons surrounding the plane crash, involved in the plane crash, less injured, or the airport staff. That is the immediate response and delayed response. Late response, it can take a days or years. It would be depending on the location of the disaster. So late response will be coming other than the community from outside source. It might be from other town, city, states, or any other thing. If it is huge, it might be from other countries also. So when in Nepal there was a huge disaster where for Nepal we used to send after earthquake in Nepal we used to send all the infrastructure. India has sent most of the infrastructure and army to help the Nepal especially. So international cooperation response would be national, immediate from the state or national or from other resources. Rehabilitation after response, immediate response, we have to rehabilitate the persons. I hope you are familiar with the term rehabilitation because it was dealing with second chapter, second chapter control of disease control and prevention. You have the definition for rehabilitation and what are the different types of rehabilitation. So coming to rehabilitation is very, very important again from theory point of view and Viva point of view. They would be asking you for sure what is the definition of rehabilitation. So response, rehabilitation and reconstruction. So after rehabilitation, we have to do reconstruction. So we have to reconstruct what are the damaged infrastructure is. So it might be earthquake, all the buildings might be damaged in a flood or a tornado. All the infrastructure like electric poles might be falling down. So electric reconstruction might be done. Everything must be done. So this is nothing but response, rehabilitation, and recovery. This is complete three steps to the recovery phase. And so it would be mitigation or important steps which were taken to decrease the next impact. Whenever there would be a next impact, you must be ready to mitigate. And preparedness is nothing but you must deploy all safety personnel. There must be a health infrastructure and other infrastructure to immediately. There must be person to act and respond. Okay, that would be the disaster cycle. So completely simplifying, we can say response, recovery, development, mitigation, and preparedness. So mitigation is one of the important terms you need to remember in this topic. And mitigation is asked many times to many of you, and it is a 4 marks question, 4 marks question as it is. So coming to disaster cycle. So Earth cycle. So first we will be seeing each and everything. Disaster impact and response. Immediately after the impact, there must be what we must do is search, rescue, and first aid. So search, you need to search for the injured person, you need to rescue the injured person, and first aid must be given. So second point you see immediate help. Immediate help always comes from the uninjured survivors. So whoever are uninjured and survived the crash or survived the earthquake. These are the person. If you see the lane public, there is an accident, there is a huge accident on the highway. So immediate responders would be immediate survivors or the nearby travelers. So you must remember this thing. Immediate help comes from uninjured survivors. So all organized relief services will be able to meet only a small fraction of the demand. So organized relief services will be, as we discussed, organized relief services. So what happened in, for suppose we are saying plane crash in Kerala. It happened in a remote place that is in a airport. So airport there would be a small healthcare facility with only 50 or 60 beds. So this organized health service would only cater for a small size that is 10 to 15 people. So that's a relief. So organized relief will be able to meet only the small fraction of demand and they need to be, rest of them would be taken to the nearby hospitals and immediate inquiry would be, there would be overcrowding of hospitals. So before the transport, we need to see what is field care. What happens in the field at the point of disaster might be a flood, earthquake, which we see in our flood or a plane crash for suppose. So this we have seen. So field care would be injured persons convert spontaneously to health facilities. So all the injured person they go to a single health facility, they would be overcrowding the health facility. So again they would be using whatever transport is available. So why I'm saying because great touch because you have seen on social media it was very viral. So what were they using? Immediately whatever transport was available, the nearby people they bought their own vehicles and they transported the injured person. So they would be taking whatever transport is available, they take the injured person to the nearby health facilities and they would be again overcrowded and they could not be managed. So provision should be for them whenever there is a overcrowding, for provision should be made for food and shelter of these people and centers must be established for inquiries. Inquiries must be inquiry, there must be center and phone free phone call, especially we have seen this in the cyclones like Amphan or the cyclone which happened in Visakhapatnam. There would be a call center established for inquiries regarding the information of the injured person or death morbid persons. So priority of victim identification. So whenever there is whenever possible, we need to identify the victims, tag them, and triage them. So what is triage? Triage is very important thing, and this asks for 90% of you. What is a triage? And this is a basic fundamental first aid knowledge you need to have. So triage is nothing but first come first treated is not follows. So as a regular on a routine basis, what you do is first come is first serve. So it is not like this in a disaster. Might be a bus train accident, flight crash, or bus accident, anything you see. It is not first come, first treated. It is we need to first classify rapidly injured persons. So classification of the person depending on the injury, we need to see. See, it is done on likelihood of their survival. So basing on the person, when you can see, when you can estimate if the person can survive or not. If there is a very previous injuries and there is a heavy bleeding from a face and head injuries, you tend to see that they might not survive. So depending on the survival, we triage the patient. So high priority is given to the persons with long-term prognosis. That is simple intensive care. There will be long-term prognosis. We give high priority. So for morbid patients, that is head injury, personal benefits is there. We give the lowest priority. So maximum benefit to greatest number of people would be our motto. So the main important point of triage is color coding. So we give color coding. There are four color codings which we give internationally, which is accepted and which we follow in the factory also. It is nothing but these four color codings are red. So it is nothing but we use tags or labels for any other material, whatever is applied. Even if you paint simple paint or a red paint, you tag them. Actually, if you see in many of the movies, especially Hollywood movies, you can see this tagging. So these people in old war movies, especially in old war movies, immediately in the war, what do? The health persons or any any person like nurses or any other doctor, they tag the person. That what they do is they use a red ribbons, color coding ribbons. So red is nothing but high priority. So red color, if you tag a person with red color, these people are of high priority. They must be shifted to the hospital as immediately as possible, and immediate care must be given, or immediate doctor consultation must be provided. This person, red is high priority, yellow is medium priority, green is the least priority. That is ambulatory patients with minimum injuries, that cuts or bruises or any other simple injuries is we give green color, and black is dead or moribund patients. For dead patients, we tag them with black. Most commonly use color coding ribbons. Ribbons will be tied to their arm, or any of their arm. They we tie these things, and based on just watch movies. You see many things you can learn from movies. So which communication is nothing but we practice what we practice, we teach. So seeing movies or in news channels, you get to know many of the information. So so this is one of the things, color triage and color coding. So try is carried out at the site of the disaster it is to determine transport priority and treatment priority and admission to the hospital or treatment center. Where the patient needs priority treatment and medical care will be reassessed again. Disaster training must be given for local health workers, and minor and moderate injuries treated at their own homes. So preferably minor and moderate injuries, we send the patients to their own homes and treat them so that there is less burden on the hospital. So we also tag the patient, tagging is nothing but we identify the person with that his name, age, which trash category, and diagnosis could be rated on the person, and we stick to the person. So of all the things, either the side of disaster, identification of dead is also very important. We need to give utmost importance to the dead. We need to okay, identification of dead is important. So as of now, during COVID time, dead bodies are not being managed by few of the relatives, which we are seeing. Give respect to the dead. So don't throw the bodies. Bodies must be respected and moved in a organized manner. So remove the bodies from the scene of the disaster and ship them to a mortuary and identify the bodies. Try to identify through any other identification available to them, and give the bodies to relatives whoever coming to accept the bodies. So next would be after that it would be relief phase. Phase which begins after the this relief phase is nothing but which when the assistance from outside comes in. So this phase begins when assistance from outside starts to reach the disaster area. Humanitarian relief depends on two things, that is type of disaster and type and quantity of supplies available locally. So disaster if it is impacting a large area, so we need to have humanitarian relief more things. So whenever there was a flash floods in Uttarakhand and these were many things which happened recently. So whenever many of the medical interns would we would be sending them to the disaster prone areas or flood affected areas to counter the people. When there is a huge population we affected, the outside assistance would be also sent. So most critical would be health supplies for treating casualties because immediately there would be health supplies would be needed. And next important long-term would be preventing more communicable diseases, especially health shelters. So others would be requirement of food, blankets, clothing, shelter, and sanitary facilities and construction for the shelters. So next important rapid damage assessment to identify needs and resources, and managing humanitarian supplies, that is acquisition, transport, storage, and distribution. So these are the many things which we need to see. So again, next important things, you are hearing the term epidemiological surveillance daily. So you need to again see surveillance, you need to know the definition of surveillance, read from the first chapter, it is there. survival, so epidemiological survival, surveillance and disease control. How to control? So there could be increase in transmission of communicable diseases through one of the following reasons. Immediately, not immediately after the disaster impact or during the response phase, there would be increased number of communicable diseases. So that would be mainly due to overcrowding and food sanitation at temporary settlements, population displacement or migration of people from one area to other. There will be again transmission of new endemic diseases. Water contamination through damage to sewerage damage or improper sanitation. Again, water contamination might be seen and waterborne diseases might occur, and program personnel diverted to relief fund. So all the program personnel. So for suppose there would be ASHA workers or other workers in Anganwadi or ANMs. They would be dealing with all the regular activities. They would be dealing with regular immunization. They would be all of the other persons who are doing other activities. They would be related to diverted to relief fund. Or suppose TB also, there would be a designated health worker to give medications to the TB patient. So all these health persons would be diverted for relief work, and they would be again increasing the other cases, other programs. The same thing is happening right now. COVID. During this COVID, we have closed, many of the hospitals have closed OPD, and we are dealing only with COVID cases. So ultimately, there was increasing other number of cases that which are not being treated. So at the side of disaster, there would be vector breeding and displacement of animals might lead to zoonotic increase in zoonotic diseases, especially leptospirosis might occur or typhus may occur, and new source of food and water is there, and which might increase again other diarrheal infections. So these are the many implications. So we must be keeping them in mind, and we must be dealing with those things. So preventing and controlling of communicable diseases after a disaster include implementing of all public health measures to reduce the risk of disease transmission. So disease report system must be there, and investigate all and report all disease outbreak. Outbreak is nothing but a small increase in number of disease. Epidemic is large number of diseases. So epidemic outbreak when occurs in large scale, we call it as epidemic. So we need to disaster. We need to do all the three steps to control communicable diseases. So vaccination. So very important thing right now. We are hearing about vaccination all the time. COVID-19. We want a vaccine. Vaccine is ultimately. So vaccine is never the ultimate treatment. So vaccine can only help. So don't mislead yourself by what is vaccination and what people are discussing regarding vaccination on your news channels. So there would be a huge political public pressure or media or mass vaccination, which we are seeing right now. Especially we have led this thing to flooding. Immediately after flooding, there would be increased number of typhoid cases. So people would be insisting on typhoid vaccine. So WHO does not recommend typhoid vaccine and cholera vaccine in routine use in endemic areas. Why? See, typhoid and cholera vaccine, if you take these two vaccines, these are multi-dose vaccines. So single dose vaccine do not make you immune or do not increase the resistance for you. So they must be taken in multiple doses. So most of them immediately after the impact of the disaster, they will take first dose of vaccination. Second dose, they might be skipping. Most of them would be skipping the second dose or other doses. So ultimately, there would be wastage of resources. That is wastage of vaccine, and there would be no protection for the person who have the habit. That is, there would be a false sense of security. The last thing you can see, people who are taking first dose, they don't know that they need to take second dose or third dose subsequently, and they would be thinking that they are secure, and they would be again false sense of security might be there, and they would be roaming indiscriminately, and they are affected, but they would be adversely affected. So large number of workers are better employed elsewhere. So if we put away vaccine, for suppose this would be other disadvantage. If we take up vaccination, again for vaccination, it's not a simple thing. There must be when we are talking with government or government health program, there must be a cold chain maintenance. Again, cold chain maintenance. You need to have electricity and personal transport equipment, and again health workers, especially ANM. or nurses, whoever who is vaccinating. So transporting of health workers would be transporting, maintaining, and they would be agents would be doing vaccinating all the persons. So large number of health workers, they are we are misregulating them and they get better employed to treat the persons or cater the basic needs of the person. So other disadvantage would be supervision of sterilization and injection is next impossible. So sterilization would not be there, and again there would be no cold chain maintenance would not be there. Ultimately, there would be a vaccination failed. So one vaccination will never be successful until it is very well planned and we have human and material resources. So most practical and effective strategy is supplying of safe drinking water, proper excreta disposal, and only continuing vaccination. So the two important points is not so as of now also what we are seeing it is depend on vaccination only three things SMS. Okay, safe distance, mask, and sanitization is the only best thing for COVID-19. In the same way, if you see flooding or any other things, the same thing is have a safe drinking of water and proper excreta disposal, which are the two important things which can protect you other than vaccination. So don't depend on vaccination or don't do insist on vaccination. So it will come whenever it is going to come, it will come and it must be a systematic manner. That is for health workers or teachers or important person must be vaccinated or high risk person, that is old people or infants must be vaccinated. Then it would be the regular public. So many important things you need to do. So nutrition, immediately after the disaster, nutrition of the people might be affected, long term or short term. So disruption of the food chain would be there. So in the trading, if you see in the trading, all this trading, all the materials are get great and they are spoiled. So they don't have proper nutrition to eat. So external assistance from nutrition would be seen would come into this action. So most vulnerable people are the infants, old people, women, women in pregnancy and lactating women are the most vulnerable women and are most vulnerable to nutritional problems. So immediate steps for relief would be assessing the food supplies of the community, gauging nutritional needs of the public, calculating food rations and needs, and monitoring nutritional status. If you have seen recently in news channels, whenever there are trades or drowning for the cities, external assistance would be there. The army would be coming in and they would be supplying rations, that is food, and food packets might be given to them for okay. Next important point would be rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is the final phase. There is nothing but restoration of pre-disaster conditions. So external at this point, external aid would be coming, which includes sophisticated medical care. That is, it initial stages, sophisticated medical care would be provided to victims, and there would be a new level of expectations for the local public, and which cannot be fulfilled because these external agencies they would be functioning only for few months or few weeks, depending on the disaster size, and they would be going away from the disaster site once their work is done. And the people, those local people, they will be having high expectations for the government to continue the same things, which cannot be fulfilled. So with the time, the patterns of the health needs will be changing rapidly. So as we see first, the patterns of health needs will be changing. That means the impact immediately after the disaster impact, there would be death or injuries or any other health needs would be like if you see in drowning or other conditions, immediately you need to have ICU establishment, or if there are injuries, immediately food intake must be taken, TT injections must be given, and ultimately, on a long term, what happens? We see there will be increasing communicable diseases. So we need to control communicable diseases also. That is, pattern of health needs should be changing rapidly. So the services should be reorganized and restructured. So that is nothing but we need to surveillance. Surveillance must be done continuously and see what kind of diseases or problems are being reported on day by day activities. Okay. So, priorities for healthcare needs towards environmental health measures. There are priorities from healthcare towards it would be shifting from healthcare towards environmental health measures. So from healthcare to environmental measures would be important. That is water supply, proper water supply, food safety, basic sanitation and personal hygiene and vector control are the important things. So water supply. So immediately after disaster, for suppose floods or earthquake, you need to survey what are the available water sources or the water pipelines damaged or water pipes survey intact or how can they provide water supply. So water supply we need to survey what are the various sources of water and what are the various supplies which can be done and determination of physical integrity of system. That is, your water pipes are intact or if there is any damage on the water pipes. Quality of the water we need to do biological and as you see in the chapter of environment, quality control of the water must be said, both biological and mechanical. All the water biological water quality check must be done and chlorination, extra chlorination, super chlorination must be done. And if any of the water source is not there, there must be emergency water tankers. Fresh drinking water must be supplied to water tankers, and these water tankers must be made well sanitized and inspected, and then only sent for supplying of water, drinking water to these affected areas. So that would be water supply and food safety. Poor food hygiene leads to foodborne diseases. So at the camps or shelters, there would be temporary kitchens might be set up. So kitchen sanitation is very important, and personal hygiene of the food handlers is monitored regularly. So at the camps or shelters, we need to see the personal hygiene and person food handlers. We need to check that is cooks or whoever is serving. We need to check that are they devoid of any health conditions or not. And basic sanitation and personal hygiene measures includes prevention of fecal contamination, ensure sanitary disposal of excreta are safe, environment and sanitary are safe. What are the temporary excreta disposal methods? And emergency latrines must be constructed, and washing, cleaning, and bathing facilities must be provided to the general public. So the most important, again, very important thing is better control programs. Control programs intensified where such diseases are epidemic. Special concerns are dengue and malaria, which are spread by mosquitoes. So mosquito bites might be there. Leptospirosis, that is due to rash or any other things, and typhus and plague, which are wheat disease, leptospirosis, typhus and plagues. Again, all these things are important to control. So vector control is also after the delay after a few days of the disaster. These are the important things which are implicated. So what is mitigation? Mitigation is again a separate question, by one question, and is asked for your theory. So mitigation is nothing but measures designed either to prevent hazard from causing emergency, or to lessen the likely effects of emergencies, lessen the likely effects. So it includes flood mitigation works. So proper flood mitigation works which include proper water drainage, capacity of the drainage, water drainage, sewerage system would be increased. Right now, it must be as per the population and land planning. Land planning, we must not construct buildings or urban land planning. Buildings must be constructed as per the norms, and there must be no encroachment of lands must not be done, especially of the lakes and rivers must not be encroachment must not be done, and include building codes as provided by the authorities. And protection of vulnerable population and structures must be there. So medical casualty can be reduced by improving the structural quality of houses, schools, or other public and private buildings, and water supply and sewerage systems are also improved. Mitigation complements the preparedness and response activities. So mitigation is nothing but it only complements before preparedness and response activities. So coming back to the last step, that is preparedness. Preparedness is nothing but long-term development activities. These are to strengthen the capacity of the country to effectively manage all types of emergencies. So objective is to ensure the system, procedures, and resources are in place to provide prompt and effective assistance. Responsibility would be of community members, resources, organization, and administration. It is a multi-sectoral activity. So the basic task under this would be evaluation of risk, risk of a community or an area, adopt standards. Communication of warning systems must be well equipped. So in India there is a pre-planned, like we have department warning regarding the cyclones or any other tornadoes or cyclones whichever might be coming. So communication systems must be established. Coordinating response mechanism between inter multi-sectoral departments would be not there would be there must be coordination between each and every person. There must be emergency financial resources. Whenever there is a disaster, we need to have emergency financial resources to divert them to tackle with the disaster. Public education must be there, especially you need to educate the people regarding different types of disaster. We will be seeing the coming steps in basic only few points what to, before disaster, after disaster, what to do or impact of disaster, what the public or must be aware of, especially in the gas leakage and during drowning or the death pit. The people must be educated regarding each and everything, how to prevent or reduce the injuries to them and coordinate with the media and hence simulation exercises must be there. Simulation exercises, especially this could be done in large multi-story apartments or building, that is how to evacuate and what are the things you need to done. So simulation exercises are done as a part. If you see, especially in Western countries or developed nation, the last 2 points, that is public education is very much, they educate the public and simulation exercise or they continuously done. Even children know how to do whenever there is a like where to go and when there is a fire in a building, how to evacuate. These are the basic exercises which are being done in many of the countries. Also, we also need to do these things. So there must be a policy development for long-term goals. That is responsibility to achieve goals. Recommended workplace activities, criteria for decision making must be taken. So policies must be top down and implementation must be from bottom down. See, try to remember these words policies. Policies must be done top, that is centers to state, state to the local districts and local to the tops. So policies must be laid down from the center and implementation. Whenever you come to the implementation, it is by the healthcare workers, that is grassroots level workers or workers involved in disaster management. So implementation we call it as bottom-up implementation. So there are the 6 sectors that are required to respond and recovery strategies. That is communication, health, social welfare, police and security, search and rescue, and transport. These are the 6 sectors which are mainly involved in response and recovery of a disaster. So personal protection in emergencies, we will be saying in brief. I will be rushing because we are going short of time. So self understanding what is personal protection, and we will be see. I'll be showing only the salient points. So personal protection in emergencies, which must be educated to the public. There is leave telephones lines free. So don't use your phones unwantedly just to talk to some other people. See, leave the phone lines except to call for help. So especially right now we might not be coming under these 6, but this was earlier when there were landlines or there was very engaged phones. Whenever you used to get, we used to ask them to leave the phone lines free. Right now also you must not. Everyone must not start calling emergency people to call and link themselves to coordinate the response activities. And you need to listen for broadcast messages from radio or any other multimedia, might be TV or internet, whatever is possible. You need to read, receive, or any other mic announcements. You need to listen to the broadcast messages and respond as per the messages. Carry out all official instructions and keep a family emergency kit and try to be what is a family emergency kit. So ultimately, it is better to be prepared than get hurt. Be informed to get and get to get organized and wait rather than act hasty. So be prepared, be informed, and wait for the health officials or others to come. So two or three things we will be seeing. Path risk floods. What happens during what are the measures to be taken during floods? During floods, turn off the electricity, move to the upper floors, prevent water contamination, evacuate danger zones, wait till water declared safe for drinking, and disinfect all the flooded rooms and get rid of all the consumables. All must be discarded. This is a brief. So if you go to this textbook and you'll be having very neat. what we done before floods, at the time of flood, at the time of this each disaster and after disaster. So we are dealing only during hurricanes. Choose a shelter. That is better put a cellular basement ready for the shade of your roof. Don't go out of the car or boat once the storm is announced. Tie down all the objects which are liable to blow down, blow away. Keep away from doors, windows, or other electrical connectors. Unplug all electrical appliances. During earthquake, follow urban planning regulations. Avoid heavy objects in high positions. Hold family evacuation drills. Keep away from stage. Don't sit under the stage. Do not go to the stricken areas or happen rescue. People indoors must move to the center part of the room. They must take protection under some benches or other things. They must not. So whenever there are toxic fuels, which was done in sterile gas leakage, stimulus with the alarm signals which were present near your surroundings. If present, tighten all the when there are any toxic fuel, tighten all the doors and windows, close all doors and windows. If there are any leakages, plaster them, stock up air intakes, seal all the cracks in doors and windows, organize a reserve of water, turn off ACs and ventilators, and follow the authority instructions. So coming back to last small topic, that is man-made disasters. They might be either accidental or intended. Intended is nothing but wars or any other war or any terrorist attack. So again, man-made disasters are categorized into three silent disasters. For example, Bhopal gas tragedy in 1984 in India and Chernobyl nuclear power station disaster in Russia. And in serious disasters, there is nuclear weapon factories, process burning, and research laboratories where they are dealing with radiological things and global warming. This is serious. And third type is wars and conflict zones. So various disasters which were occurred in India in recent years. Average of eight major calamities occurs for India a year. Minimum of 10 natural calamities are affected a year. And this year we had many more. So on this we think whenever we come across it, we Bhopal gas tragedy, super cyclone of Orissa many times, Gujarat earthquake, in Bhuj, and tsunami in 2004, Uttarakhand floods, 2013, Kashmir floods, 14, Starting gas leakage, Visakhapatnam, and these are the major things. And major things will be like floods in Assam, floods, landslides in Kerala, and Ampar, cyclone Ampar in West Bengal, and again plane crash in Kerala. So organization, state governments must execute the relief work, and government of India has only supportive role or financial sources. So overall, the coordination must be done by Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Home Affairs is a coordinating activity for disaster, and National Disaster Management Authority is responsible for all the plans, NDMA. So disaster management of Act 2005 was set up, and NDMA at state national level and SDMA state level and DGSS Director General of Health Services. Special wing they have there is emergency medical relief wing is dealing with health. They coordinate with the other people. And IMD there is meteorological Indian Meteorological Disaster. Sorry, Indian Meteorological Department. They warn us regarding various disasters. There are five centers, the warning centers. They are located at Kolkata, Bhubaneswar, Visakhapatnam, Chennai, and Mumbai. Uh, they give warnings for us. So World Disaster Day is seen on second Wednesday of every October. There are also many other international agencies which coordinate with international. So that will be the disaster. Thank you very much. So don't skip this chapter. This chapter is very important, especially mitigation, triage, disaster cycle, which will be asked for 80 to 90% of you for Viva and theory. Also, you might come across any of the things like mitigation, what is triage, or simply what is a disaster cycle. Disaster cycle can come as essay for you also. So go through this. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.